Hello, fanatics. Welcome to True Crime Story Time with me, Cindy. I fell into another rabbit hole this week. I'm not going to make any secret about it. I went back onto Google. And was like, who are the worst serial killers? Obviously Ted Bundy we covered the other week. Wow, you guys were screaming at me. It's not my fault that he just kind of got onto a plane being one of the 10 FBI most wanted. It's not my fault. I didn't suggest it to him. I didn't help him. But frustrating, yes. So you kind of were shouting at me for that, and I don't blame you. But yeah, then we did Robert Picton. Disgusting. And this week I went back to my who are the worst serial killers, and David Berkowitz came up. David Berkowitz? Never heard of David Berkowitz. Let's fall into that one. Let's go see who David Berkowitz is. Well, turns out I did know of him. Not his whole crime spree, to be honest, but he is, aka, the son of Sam. I'm going to talk about this case. Then at the end, I am going to chat with my opinions. Okay, so I'm going to save it all till the end. David Berkowitz was born Richard David Falco on June the 1st in 1953 in Brooklyn, New York. Within a few days of his birth, his biological mother, Elizabeth, known as Betty Broder, gave the child away. Betty had started a relationship 3 years previously with a married man named Joseph Kleinman, who became Richard's biological father. Although her reasons for giving Richard away are unknown, writers have surmised that Joseph, the dad, threatened to abandon her if she kept the baby and used his name. Betty had grown up as part of an impoverished Jewish family and was a working waitress. Prior to meeting Joseph in 1936, she had married Tony Falco, an Italian-American. After a marriage of less than 4 years, Tony left her for another woman. The infant Richard was adopted by Pearl and Nathan Berkowitz of the Bronx. The Jewish-American couple were hardware store retailers of modest means and childless in middle age. They reversed the order of the boy's first and middle names and gave him their own surname. So they were raising a young David Richard Berkowitz as their only child. Journalist John Vincent Sanders wrote that Berkowitz's childhood was somewhat troubled. Although of average above intelligence, he lost interest in his education at an early age and became infatuated with petty larceny and starting fires. Now, larceny is like petty theft, just in case you didn't know, theft of personal possessions. Neighbours and relatives would recall Berkowitz as difficult, spoilt, and a bully. His adoptive parents consulted at least one psychotherapist due to his misconduct, but his misbehaviour never resulted in any legal intervention or any serious mention in his school records. Insert red flag. Berkowitz's adoptive mother died of breast cancer when he was 14 years old, and his home life became strained in later years, particularly because he disliked his adoptive father's second wife. Berkowitz lived with his father while attending Christopher Columbus High School, graduating in 1971, and college in a 4.5-room apartment at 170 Dressier Loop in Co-op City from 1967 to 1971. In 1971, at the age of 17, Berkowitz joined the United States Army and served at Fort Knox in the US with an infantry division in South Korea. After an honourable discharge in June 1974, he located his birth mother Betty. Insert red flag. After a few visits, she disclosed the details of his birth. The news greatly disturbed Berkowitz, and he was particularly distraught by the array of reluctant father figures. Insert red flag. Forensic anthropologist Elliot Layton described Berkowitz's discovery of his birth details as the primary crisis of his life, a revelation that shattered his sense of identity. His communication with his birth mother later lapsed, but for a time he remained in communication with his half-sister, Rosalind. Berkowitz attended Bronx Community College for 1 year, enrolling in the spring of 1975. In 1976, he went to work as a driver for the Co-op County Taxi Company. He subsequently had several non-professional jobs, and at the time of his arrest was working as a letter sorter for the United States Postal Service. During the mid-1970s, Berkowitz started to commit violent crimes. He bungled his first attempt at murder using a knife, then switched to a handgun and began a lengthy crime spree throughout the New York boroughs of the Bronx, Brooklyn, and Queens, seeking young female victims. He seems most attracted to white women with dark, wavy hair. But one of the crime scenes involved 2 victims. He infamously committed some of his attacks while the women sat with boyfriends in parked cars. Berkowitz exhibited an enduring enjoyment of his activities, often returning to the scenes of his crimes, not in the same way Ted Bundy did. Berkowitz claimed that when he was 22 years old, he committed his first attack on Christmas Eve in 1975, when he used a hunting knife to stab 2 women in Co-op City. The first alleged victim, a Hispanic woman, was never identified by police. The second was 15-year-old Michelle Foreman, a sophomore at Truman High School, whom he stabbed 6 times on a bridge near Dressier Loop, and whose injuries were serious enough for her to be hospitalized for a week. Berkowitz was not suspected of these crimes, and soon afterwards he relocated to an apartment in Yonkers. The first shooting attributed to Berkowitz occurred in Pelham Bay neighborhood of the Bronx. At about 1:10 a.m. on July 29th in 1976, Donna Lauria, 18, an emergency medical technician, and her friend Jody Valentine, 19, a nurse, were sitting in Jody's double-parked Oldsmobile discussing their evening at Petries, a New Rochelle discotheque. Donna opened the car door, to leave, and noticed a man quickly approaching. Startled and angered by the man's sudden appearance, she said, "Now what's this?" The man produced a gun from the paper bag that he carried and crouched, bracing an elbow on his knee, aiming his weapon with both hands, and fired. Donna was struck by one bullet that killed her instantly. Jody was shot in her thigh, and a third bullet missed both women. The shooter turned and walked away quickly. Jody survived her injury and said that she did not recognize the killer. She described him as a white male in his 30s with a fair complexion, about 5 feet inches, and weighing about 200 pounds. His hair was short, dark, and curly in mod style. This description was repeated by Donna's father, who claimed to have seen a similar man sitting in a yellow compact car parked nearby. Neighbours gave corroborating reports to police that an unfamiliar yellow compact car had been cruising the area for hours before the shooting. Years later, in 1993, an imprisoned Berkowitz admitted in an interview with journalist Murray Terry that he had shot Donna and Jody. On October 23rd in 1976, a similar shooting occurred in a secluded residential area of Flushing, Queens, next to Bound Park. Carl De Niro, a Citibank security guard, and Rosemary Keenan, 18, a Queen's College student, were sitting in Rosemary's parked car when the windows suddenly shattered. Quote, "I felt the car exploded," end quote, Cole said later. Rosemary quickly started the car and sped away for help. The panicked couple did not realise that someone had been shooting at them, even though Carl was bleeding from a bullet wound to his head. Rosemary had only superficial injuries from the broken glass, but Carl eventually needed a metal plate to replace a portion of his skull. Neither victim saw the attacker. Police determined that the bullets embedded in Rosemary's car were .44 caliber, but they were so deformed that they thought it unlikely that they would ever be linked to a particular weapon. Because Carl had shoulder-length hair, police later speculated that the shooter had mistaken him for a woman. Rosemary's father was a 20-year veteran police detective of the New York City Police Department, the NYPD, causing an intense investigation. As with the Donna Jody shooting, however, there seemed not to be any tangible motive for the shooting. Police made little progress with the case. Many details of the Carl Rosemary shooting were very similar to the Donna Jody case, but police did not initially associate them, partly because the shootings occurred in different boroughs and were investigated by different police precincts. High school students Donna Massey, 16, and Joanne Lomino, 18, walked home from a movie shortly after midnight on November the 27th in 1976. They were chatting on the porch of Joanne's home in Floral Park when a young man dressed in military fatigues approached them and began to ask for directions. In a high-pitched voice, he said, "Can you tell me how to get..." but then quickly produced a revolver. He shot each of the victims once, and as they fell to the ground injured, he fired several more times, striking the apartment building before running away. A neighbour heard the gunshots, rushed out of the apartment and saw a blonde man running past, gripping a pistol in his left hand. Donna had been shot in the neck, but the wound was not life-threatening. Joanne was hit in the back and hospitalised in serious condition. She was ultimately rendered paraplegic. About 12:40 a.m. on January the 30th in 1977, Secretary Christine Fund and her fiancé bartender John Deal, Christine's 26, John is 30, were sitting in John's car near the Forest Hills in Queens, preparing to drive to a dance hall after having seen the movie Rocky. 3 gunshots penetrated the car. In a panic, John drove away for help. He suffered minor superficial injuries, but Christine was shot twice and died several hours later at the hospital. Neither victim had seen their attacker. Police made the first public acknowledgement that the Christine John shooting was similar to the earlier incidents, and that the crimes might be connected. All the victims had been struck with .44 caliber bullets, and the shooting seemed to target young women with long dark hair. NYPD Sergeant Richard Conlon stated that police were, quote, leaning towards a connection in all these cases, end quote. Composite sketches were released of the black-haired Donna Jody suspect and the blonde Joanne Donna suspect, and Conlon noted that police were looking for multiple suspects, not just one. At about 7:30 p.m. on March the 8th in 1977, Columbia University student Virginia, 19, was walking home from school when she was confronted by an armed man. She lived about a block from where Christine had been shot. In a desperate move to defend herself, Virginia lifted her textbooks between herself and her killer, but the makeshift shield was penetrated. The bullet struck her head and ultimately killed her. In a March the 10th, 1977 press conference, the NYPD officials and Mayor Abraham Beam declared that the same .44 Bulldog revolver had fired the shots that killed Donna and Virginia. Official documents were later revealed, however, saying that while police strongly suspected that the same .44 Bulldog had been used in the shootings, the evidence was actually inconclusive. The crimes were discussed by the local media virtually every day. Circulation increased dramatically for the New York Post and the Daily News tabloid newspapers, with graphic crime reporting and commentary. Foreign media featured many of the reports as well, including front-page articles of newspapers. At about 3 a.m. on the 17th of April in 1977, Alexander, 20, a tow truck operator, and Valentina, 18, a college student and aspiring actress and model, were sitting in a car belonging to Alexander's brother on the Hutchinson River Parkway service road in the Bronx, about a block from Valentina's home and only a few blocks away from the scene of the Donna Jody shooting. A resident of a nearby building heard 4 shots and called the police. Valentina, who was sitting on the driver's seat, was shot once, and Alexander shot twice, both in the head. Valentina died at the scene, and Alexander died in the hospital several hours later without being able to describe his attacker. Police said that the weapon used for the crime was the same one which they had suspected in the earlier shootings. In 1993, Berkowitz confirmed that he was behind the shooting. Police discovered a handwritten letter near the bodies of Alexander and Valentina, written mostly in block capitals with a few lowercase letters and addressed to the NYPD Captain Joseph Borelli. With this letter, Berkowitz identified himself as son of Sam for the first time. The press had previously dubbed the killer the .44 caliber killer because of his choice of weapon. The letter was initially withheld from the public, but some of its contents were revealed to the press, and the name Son of Sam quickly replaced the old name. The letter expressed the killer's determination to continue his work and taunted police for their fruitless efforts to capture him. In full, the letter read, "I am deeply hurt by your calling me a women hater." It's spelt really badly, so I can't read it properly. "I am not, but I am a monster. I am son of Sam. I am a little brat. When Father Sam gets drunk, he gets mean. He beats his family. Sometimes he ties me up to the back of the house. Other times he locks me in the garage. Sam loves to drink blood. Go out and kill, commands Father Sam. Behind our house some rest, mostly young, raped and slaughtered, their blood drained, just bones now. Papa Sam keeps me locked in the attic too. I can't get out, but I look out the attic window and watch the world go by. I feel like an outsider. I am on a different wavelength than everybody else, programmed to kill. However, to stop me, you must kill me. Attention, all police. Shoot me first. Shoot to kill or else. Keep out of my way or you'll die. Papa Sam is old now. He needs some blood to preserve his youth. He has had too many heart attacks. Too many heart attacks. Ugh, me hoot, it hurts, sonny boy. I miss my pretty princess most of all. She's resting in Our Lady's house, but I'll see her soon. I am the monster, Beelzebub, the chubby behemoth. I love to hunt. Prowling the streets, looking for fair game, tasty meat. The women of Queens are the prettiest of all. I must be the water they drink. I live for the hunt, my life. Blood for Papa, Mr. Borelli, sir. I don't want to kill any more. No, sir, no more, but I must honour thy father. I want to make love to the world. I love people. I don't belong on earth. Return me to yahoos. To the people of Queens, I love you, and I want to wish all of you a happy Easter. May God bless you in this life and the next. For now I say goodbye and good night. Please let me haunt you with these words. I'll be back. I'll be back, to be interpreted as bang, 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 bank, bang. Yours in murder, Mr. Monster. At the time, police speculated that the writer, or the letter writer, might be familiar with Scottish English. The phrase, me hoot, it hurt, sonny boy, was taken as Scottish accented version of my heart, it hurts, sonny boy. The police also hypothesized that the shooter blamed a dark-haired nurse for his father's death due to the too many heart attacks phrase, and the facts that Donna was a medical technician and Jodie was studying to become a nurse. The killer's unusual attitude towards the police and the media received widespread scrutiny. Psychologists observed that many serial killers gain gratification by eluding pursuers and observers. The feeling of control over media, law enforcement, and even entire populations provides a source of social power for them. After consulting with several psychiatrists, police released a psychological profile of their suspect on May the 26th in 1977. He was described as neurotic, who probably had paranoid schizophrenia and believed himself to be a victim of demonic possession. On May the 30th in 1977, Daily News journalist Jimmy Breslin received a handwritten letter from someone who claimed to be the .44 caliber killer. The letter was postmarked early that same day in Englewood, New Jersey. On the reverse of the envelope, neatly hand-printed, 4 precisely centered lines, were the words, "Blood and family, darkness and death, absolute depravity. 44. The letter inside read, "Hello from the gutters of NYC, which are filled with dog manure, vomit, stale wine, urine and blood. Hello from the sewers of NYC, which swallow up these delicacies when they are washed away by the sweeper trucks. Hello from the cracks in the sidewalk of NYC and from the ants that dwell in these cracks and feed in the dried blood of the dead that has settled into the cracks. JB, I'm just dropping you a line to let you know that I appreciate your interest in those recent and horrendous 44 killings. I also want to tell you that I read your column daily and I find it quite informative. Tell me, Jim, what will you have for July 29th? You can forget about me if you like, because I don't care for publicity. However, you must not forget Donna Lauria, and you cannot let the people forget her either. She was a very, very sweet girl, but Sam's a thirsty lad and he won't let me stop killing until he gets his fill of blood. Mr. Breslin, sir, don't think that because you haven't heard from me for a while that I went to sleep. No, rather, I am still here. Like a spirit roaming the night, thirsty, hungry, seldom stopping to rest, anxious to please Sam. I love my work. Now the void has been filled. Perhaps we shall meet face to face some day, or perhaps I will be blown away by cops with smoking 38s. Whatever, if I shall be fortunate enough to meet you, I will tell you all about Sam if you like, and I will introduce you to him. His name is Sam the Terrible. Not knowing what the future holds, I shall say farewell, and I will see you at the next job. Or should I say, you will see my handiwork at the next job. Remember, Miss Lauria, thank you. In their blood and from the gutter, Sam's creation. Point 44. Here are some names to help you along. Forward them to the inspector for use by NCIC. The Duke of Death, the Wicked King Wicker, the 22 Disciplines of Hell, John Wheaties, rapist and suffocator of young girls. P.S. Please inform all the detectives working on the slaying to remain. P.S. J.B. Please inform all the detectives working the case that I wish them the best of luck. Keep 'em digging, drive on, think positive, get off your butts, knock on coffins, etc. Upon my capture I promise to buy all the guys working the case a new pair of shoes if I can get up the money. Son of Sam. Underneath the Son of Sam was a logo or sketch that combined several symbols. The writer's question, "What will you have for July 29?" was considered an ominous threat. July 29 would be the anniversary of the Donna Jody shooting. Breslin notified police, who thought that the letter was probably from someone with knowledge of the shootings. The Breslin letter was sophisticated in its wording and presentation, especially when compared to the crudely written first letter. And police suspected that it might have been created in an art studio or similar professional location by someone with expertise in printing, calligraphy, or graphic design. The unusual writing caused the police to speculate that the killer was a comic book letterer, and they asked staff members of DC Comics whether they recognised the lettering. The Wicked King Wicker reference caused police to arrange a private screening of The Wicker Man, a 1973 horror movie. The Daily News published the letter a week later after agreeing with police to withhold portions of the text, and Breslin urged the killer to surrender. The dramatic article made that day's paper the highest-selling edition of the Daily News to date. More than 1.1 million copies were sold. Police received thousands of tips based on references in the publicised portions of the letter, all of which proved useless. As all of the shooting victims to date had long dark hair, thousands of women in the New York City acquired shortcuts or brightly coloured dyes, and beauty supply stores had trouble meeting the demand for wigs. On June 26, 1977, Sal Lupo, 20, a mechanic's helper, and Judy Placido, 17, a recent high school graduate, had left a discotheque in Bayside in Queens. They were sitting in Sal's parked car at about 3 a.m. when 3 gunshots blasted through the vehicle. Sal was wounded in the right forearm, while Judy was shot in the right temple, shoulder, and back of the neck. Both victims survived their injuries. Sal told police that the young couple had been discussing the Son of Sam case only moments before the shooting. Neither Sal nor Judy had seen their attacker, but 2 witnesses reported a tall, dark-haired man in a leisure suit fleeing from the area. One claimed to see him leave in a car and even supplied a partial license plate number. With the first anniversary of the initial .44 caliber shootings approaching, police established a sizable dragnet that emphasised past hunting grounds in Queens and the Bronx. However, the next and final shooting occurred in Brooklyn. Early on July 31st in 1977, Secretary Stacy Moskowitz and clothing salesman Robert Vellante, both 20, were sitting in Robert's car, which was parked under a streetlight near a city park in Bath Beach, on their first date. They were kissing when a man approached within 3 feet of the passenger side of the car and fired 4 rounds, striking both victims in the head before he escaped into the park. Robert lost his left eye. Stacy, the only blonde victim of Berkowitz, died from her injuries. That night, Detective John Faltico was awakened at home and told to report to the 10th Homicide Division at the 60th Precinct Station House in Coney Island. He was given 2 weeks to work the Stacy and Robert case as a normal murder investigation. If it could not be solved in that time frame, it was to be given to the Son of Sam task force. Local resident Cecilia Davis was walking her dog at the scene of the Stacy and Robert shooting when she saw a patrol officer, Michael Cantaneo, ticketing a car that was parked near a fire hydrant. Moments after the traffic police had left, a young man walked past her from the area of the car and seemed to study her with some interest. She felt concerned because he was wielding in his hand some kind of, quote, dark object. She ran to her home only to hear shots fired behind her in the street. She remained silent about this experience for 4 days until she finally contacted police, who closely checked every car that had been ticketed in the area that night. Berkowitz's yellow 1970 Ford Galaxy was among the cars that were investigated. On August the 9th, 1977, NYPD Detective James Justice telephoned the Yonkers Police Department to ask them to schedule an interview with Berkowitz. The Yonkers police dispatcher who first took his call was Wheat Carr, the daughter of Sam Carr and the sister of Berkowitz's alleged cult confederates John and Michael Carr. As soon as Justice mentioned Berkowitz's name to Wheat, she said, quote, "Let me tell you about him. I know him. He lives right behind me." She also informed Justice that Berkowitz had shot and wounded their black Labrador retriever, Harvey, and that was her father's, Sam's, dog. When Justice heard Sam, he had a very good feeling that Berkowitz was their suspect. Justice asked Yonkers police for some help tracking down Berkowitz. According to Mike Novotny, a Yonkers police sergeant. The department had their own suspicions about Berkowitz in connection with strange crimes in their jurisdiction, which were referred to in one of the letters that the son of Sam wrote. Yonkers investigators even told Justice that Berkowitz might well be the son of Sam. The following day, on August 10th, 1977, police investigated Berkowitz's car, which was parked outside his apartment building at 35 Pine Street, Yonkers. They saw a gun in the back seat and searched the car and found a duffel bag filled with ammunition, maps of the crime scenes, and threatening letter addressed to Inspector Timothy Dowd of the Son of Sam Task Force. Police decided to wait for Berkowitz to leave the apartment rather than risk a violent confrontation in the building's narrow hallway. They also waited to obtain a search warrant for the apartment, worried that their search might be challenged in court. The initial search of the vehicle was based on the handgun that was visible in the back seat. Although possession of such a gun was legal in New York State and required no special permit, the warrant still had not arrived when Berkowitz exited the apartment at around 10 p.m. and entered his car. Detective John approached the driver's side of the car and pointed his gun close to Berkowitz's temple, while Detective Sergeant William Gardella pointed his gun from the passenger side. A paper bag containing a .44 caliber bulldog revolver of the type that was identified in ballistic tests was found next to Berkowitz in the car. Berkowitz then stated flatly, quote, "Well, you got me." As described in Son of Sam, 1981, by Lawrence Klausner, Detective John remembered the big, inexplicable smile on the man's face. Quote, "Now that I've got you, who have I got?" The man said, "You know." The detective replied, "No, I don't. Tell me." The man turned his head and said, "I'm Sam." "You're Sam? Sam who?" "Sam, David Berkowitz." An alternative version claims that Berkowitz's first words were reported to be, quote, "Well, you got me. How come it took you such a long time?" Detective John was officially credited by the NYPD as the arresting officer of the Son of Sam. Police searched Berkowitz's apartment and found it in disarray, with satanic graffiti on the walls. They also found diaries that he had kept since he was aged 21. 3 stenographers' notebooks, nearly all full wherein Berkowitz meticulously noted hundreds of arsons that he claimed to have set throughout New York City. Some sources speculate that this number might be over 1,400. Soon after Berkowitz's arrest, the address of the apartment building was changed from 35 Pine Street to 42 Pine Street in an attempt to end its notoriety. Berkowitz was briefly held in a Yonkers police station before being transported directly to the 60th Precinct in Coney Island, where the Son of Sam task force was located. At about 1 a.m, Mayor Beam arrived to see the suspect personally. After a brief and wordless encounter, he announced to the media, quote, "The people of the city of New York can rest easy because of the fact the police have captured a man whom they believe to be the Son of Sam." Berkowitz was interrogated for about 30 minutes in the early morning of August the 11th, 1977. He quickly confessed to the shootings and expressed an interest in pleading guilty. The investigation was led by John Keenan, who took the confession. During questioning, Berkowitz claimed that his neighbour's dog was one of the reasons that he killed, stating that the dog demanded the blood of pretty young girls. He said that the Sam mentioned in the first letter was his former neighbour, Sam Carr, and that Harvey, Carr's black Labrador, was possessed by an ancient demon which issued irresistible commands that Berkowitz kill people. A few weeks after his capture, Berkowitz was permitted to communicate with the press. In a letter to the New York Post, dated September 19th, 1977, he alluded to his original story of demonic possession, but closed with a warning that has been interpreted by some investigators as an admission of criminal accomplices. Quote, "There are other sons out there. God help the world." End quote. At a press conference in February 1979, however, Berkowitz declared that his previous claims of demonic possession were a hoax. Berkowitz later stated in a series of meetings with his special court-appointed psychiatrist, David Abrahamson, that he had long contemplated murder to get revenge on a world that he felt had rejected and hurt him. 3 separate mental health examinations determined that Berkowitz was competent to stand trial. Despite this, defense lawyers advised Berkowitz to enter a plea of not guilty by reason of insanity, but he refused. Berkowitz appeared calm in court on May the 8th, 1978, as he pleaded guilty to all of the shootings. At his sentencing 2 weeks later, Berkowitz caused an uproar when he attempted to jump out of a window on the 7th floor courtroom. After he was restrained, he repeatedly chanted, "Stacy was a WHORE," and shouted, "I'd kill her again. I'd kill them all again." The court ordered another psychiatric examination before sentencing could proceed. During the evaluation, Berkowitz drew a sketch of a jailed man surrounded by numerous walls. At the bottom he wrote, "I'm not well at all." Nonetheless, Berkowitz was again found competent to stand trial. On the 12th of June 1978, Berkowitz was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison for each murder, to be served consecutively. He was ordered to serve time in Attica Correctional Facility, a supermax prison in upstate New York. Despite prosecutors' objections, the terms of Berkowitz's guilty plea made him eligible for parole in 25 years. After his arrest, Berkowitz was initially confined to a psychiatric ward in Kings County Hospital, where the staff reported that he seemed remarkably troubled by his new environment. On the day after his sentencing, he was taken first to Sing Sing. Now that's rough. Then to the upstate Clinton Correctional Facility for psychiatric and physical examinations. 2 more months were spent at the Central New York Psychiatric Center in Marcy before his admission to Attica Prison. Berkowitz served about a decade in Attica until he was relocated to Sullivan Correctional Facility in Fallsburg, where he remained for many years. Berkowitz described his life in Attica Correctional Facility as a, quote, nightmare. I mean, I should imagine it is. You're used to roaming around the streets, picking on innocent victims, and now you're like incarcerated. It must be, quote, a nightmare. In 1979, there was an attempt on Berkowitz's life in which the left side of his neck was slashed from front to back, resulting in a wound that required more than 50 stitches to close. Berkowitz refused to identify his assailant and claimed only that he was grateful for the attack. It brought a sense of justice, or, in Berkowitz's own words, quote, the punishment I deserve. In 1987, Berkowitz became a Christian in prison. According to his personal testimony, his moment of conversation occurred after reading Psalm 34:6 from a Bible given to him by a fellow inmate. He says he is no longer to be referred to as the son of Sam, but the son of hope. Soon after his imprisonment, Berkowitz invited Malachi Martin, an exorcist, to help him compose an autobiography, but the offer was not accepted. During later years, Berkowitz developed his memoirs with assistance from fellow Christians. His statements were released as a 1998 interview video, Son of Hope, with a more extensive work released in a book entitled Son of Hope, The Prison Journals of David Berkowitz. Berkowitz does not receive any royalties or profits from any sales of his work. He continued to write essays on faith and repentance for Christian websites. A website is maintained on Berkowitz's behalf by a church group, since he's not allowed access to a computer. Berkowitz stays involved with prison ministry and regularly counsels troubled inmates. While in the Sullivan facility, he pursued education and graduated with honours from Sullivan Community College. Berkowitz is entitled to a parole hearing every 2 years, as mandated by state law, though he has consistently refused to ask for his release, sometimes skipping the hearings altogether. Before his first parole hearing in 2002, Berkowitz sent a letter to New York Governor George Pataki demanding that it be cancelled. He wrote, quote, "In all honesty, I believe that I deserve to be in prison for the rest of my life. I have, with God's help, long ago come to terms with my situation, and I have accepted my punishment." Officials at the Sullivan facility rejected his demand. At his 2016 hearing, Berkowitz stated that while parole was unrealistic, he felt he had improved himself behind bars, adding, quote, "I feel I am no risk whatsoever," end quote. His lawyer, Mark Heller, noted that prison staff considered Berkowitz to be a model prisoner. Commissioners denied a parole. His most recent parole hearing, scheduled for May 2020, was indefinitely delayed due to, that lovely virus that went round? Yeah, due to that. In 2002, during the DC sniper attacks, Berkowitz wrote a letter telling the sniper to stop hurting innocent people. Yeah, he did that. He made his comments in a 3-page letter to Fox News personality Rita Cosby after she wrote to him seeking his comment on the sniper attacks. During June 2005, Berkowitz sued one of his previous lawyers for the misappropriation of a large number of letters, photographs, and other personal possessions. Hugo, a New Jersey attorney, had represented Berkowitz in an earlier legal effort to prevent the National Enquirer from buying one of his letters. Hugo then self-published his own collection of letters and memorabilia, Dear David, which he had obtained from Berkowitz during their consultations. Berkowitz stated that he would drop the lawsuit only if the attorney signed over all the money he made to the victims' families. In October 2006, Berkowitz and Hugo settled out of court, with Hugo agreeing to return the disputed items and to donate part of his book profits to the New York State Crime Victims Board. After his admission to Sullivan Prison, Berkowitz began to claim that he had joined a satanic cult in the spring of 1975. In 1993, he made these claims known when he announced to the press that he had killed only 3 of the Son of Sam victims, Donna, Alexander, and Virginia. In his revised version of the events, Berkowitz said that other shooters were involved and that he fired the gun only in the first attack, the Donna and Jody attack, and in the 6th with Alexander and Virginia. He said that he and several other cult members were involved in every incident by planning the events, providing early surveillance of the victims, and acting as lookouts and drivers at the crime scenes. Berkowitz stated that he could not divulge the names of most of his accomplices without putting his family directly at risk. Among Berkowitz's alleged unnamed associates was a female cult member who he claimed fired the gun at Carl and Rosemary. Berkowitz attributed their survival to the alleged accomplices' unfamiliarity with the powerful recoil of a .44 Bulldog. He declared that, quote, at least 5, end quote, cult members were at the scene of the Christine John shooting, but the actual shooter was a prominent cult associate who had been brought in from outside New York. With an unspecified motive, a cult member whom he identified only by his nickname Manson 2. Another unnamed person was the gunman in the Stacey Robert case, a male cult member who had arrived from North Dakota for the occasion, also without explanation. Berkowitz did name 2 of the cult members, John and Michael Carr. The 2 men were sons of the dog owner Sam Carr, and they lived on nearby Warburton Avenue. Both these other sons of Sam were long dead. John Carr had been killed in a shooting judged by a suicide in North Dakota during 1978, and Michael Carr had been in a fatal car accident in 1979. Berkowitz claimed that the perpetrator of the Donna Joanne shooting was John, and he added that a Yonkers police officer, also a cult member, was involved in this crime. He claimed that Michael fired the shots at Sal and Judy. Author Morris Terry wrote that Michael was an active member of the Church of Scientology at the time of Berkowitz's arrest. He had been in possession of a list of telephone numbers, including the number for the Fort Harrison Hotel, the church's spiritual headquarters in Clearwater, Florida. Journalist John Hockenberry asserted that even apart from the satanic cult claims, many officials doubted the single shooter theory, writing, quote, "What most don't know about the Son of Sam case is that from the beginning, not everyone bought the idea that Berkowitz acted alone," end quote. John Santucci, the Queen's District Attorney at the time of the killings, and police investigator Mike Noventy, both expressed their convictions that Berkowitz had accomplices. NYPD officer Richard Johnson, involved in the original investigation, said that he had unresolved discrepancies in statements from witnesses and surviving victims indicated that Berkowitz did not act alone. Quote, "Why are there 3 suspect cars, 5 different suspect descriptions, different heights, different shapes, different sizes of the perpetrator? Somebody else was there," end quote. Other contemporaries voiced their belief in the satanic cult theory, including Donna Lauria's father. Berkowitz survivor Carl De Niro stated his opinion that, quote, "more than one person was involved," end quote, but admitted he could not prove the cult theory. His conclusions rests on his criticism of the Berkowitz statement to police as totally false. John's recollection is that he physically bumped into Berkowitz outside the Wine Gallery restaurant as he and Christine departed and walked to his car where the shooting occurred. Berkowitz, in contrast, told police that he passed within a few feet of John and Christine shortly before they entered the car. John contends he and Christine passed no one on the way to their car, and that the position of the car parked at the curb would have made it impossible for Berkowitz to have sneaked up on them in the few minutes between the encounter outside the restaurant and the shooting at the car. John therefore reasons he was shot by someone other than Berkowitz. Journalist Maury Terry published a series of investigative articles for Gannett newspapers in 1979 which challenged the official finding of a lone gunman in the Son of Sam case. Vigorously denied by police at the time, Terry's articles were widely read and discussed. They were later assembled into a book. Largely impelled by these reports of accomplices and satanic cult activity, the Son of Sam case was reopened by Yonkers police in 1996, but no new charges were filed. Due to the lack of findings, the investigation was eventually suspended but remains open. In 2021, Terry's work served as the basis for the Netflix series The Son of Sam, A Descent into Darkness. From prison, Berkowitz continued to assert and expand upon his claims of demonic possession. He stated in a series of 9 videos in 2015 that the voice he heard was that of Samhain, a druid devil and the true origin of Son of Sam. He added that it was never a dog, saying that detail was fabricated by the media. Berkowitz's later claims were dismissed by many. Breslin rejected his story of satanic occult accomplices, stating that when they talked to David Berkowitz that night, he recalled everything step by step by step. The guy has 1,000% recall, and that's it. He's the guy. There's nothing else to look at. Other skeptics included former FBI profiler John E. Douglas, who spent hours interviewing Berkowitz and concluded he was an introverted loner not capable of being involved in group activity. NYPD psychologist Dr. Harvey Schlossberg stated in Against the Law, a documentary about the Son of Sam case, that he believes that the satanic cult claims are nothing but a fantasy concocted by Berkowitz to absolve him of his crimes. In his book Hunting Humans, Elliot Layton argued that recent journalistic attempts to abridge or even deny Berkowitz's guilt have lacked all credibility. Decades after his arrest, the name Son of Sam remains widely recognized as that of a notorious serial killer. Many manifestations in popular culture have helped this notoriety, while Berkowitz himself continues to express remorse on Christian websites. Stacy's mum, who previously had not hidden her hatred of Berkowitz, wrote him a letter shortly before her own death in 2006, forgiving him for killing her daughter Stacy. Stacy's mum lost all her children at a young age. Jodie, aged 9, in a possible suicide in 1968. Stacy, of course, and Ricky, aged 37, from an illness. She had no survivors except, according to her New York Post, her daughter's murderer. After rampant speculation about publishers offering Berkowitz large sums of money for his story, the New York State Legislature swiftly passed a new law that prevented convicted criminals and their relatives from making any financial profit from books, movies, or other enterprises related to the stories of their crimes. Similar laws have since been enacted in 41 states and at a federal level. And there we go. That is the Son of Sam true crime part. Now, let's get into this discussion, because several things irritate me in this case, and some things I kinda not want to give him praise because he committed atrocious acts, but yeah, we'll discuss. Okay, so first of all, let's go back to the beginning. He's born, he's given up, and he ends up with a new family. By all accounts, were perfectly fine. You know, there was no abuse or anything like that. But what struck me was as odd was the fact that, like, I'm Cindy Michelle, and if I'm adopted, and as a toddler, you know your name, so then I'm suddenly Michelle Cindy and given their surname. It's a bit bizarre in my opinion. Why do that? Then we get to the revelation of birth and a psychologist said, hey, that shattered his identity, and it was a pivotal point. I think people, or psychologists, or theorists, or people like us who are just into true crime, we find it fascinating because, let's admit it, guys, we've had boyfriends or girlfriends or family members where we suddenly thought, "Whoa, I could just choke the life out of you." That's as far as it goes. We don't, because it's wrong. I think psychologists and everything else look for a trigger. Now, I've dealt with some very abusive situations in my past, not just from my abuser, but following on from that, from boyfriends and all sorts. You can pick any pivotal point you like in my childhood. I'm still sane, nice, kind, affectionate, generous. I'm not a serial killer. I think we, as true crime fanatics, look for justifications. What's happened, what triggered them, why did they become this person? And they put it down to when he found out about his birth, and that was a pivotal point in his lifetime. And yeah, however, my argument is, before that happened, he was already doing, like, stealing stuff and committing arson. So that kind of doesn't hold up, in my opinion, in my justification of things. Now, moving on to his crimes, which were atrocious. He was 22 years old when he stabbed 2 girls. The Hispanic woman is unknown. I don't know if she survived or passed away from her injuries, but Michelle Foreman, who was 15, did survive, and they were his first attempts at murder. It is what it is, attempted murder, because they survived. And then he thought, well, that wasn't very effective, was it? So I'm going to go and use a gun now. I believe there was 18 victims. I had to go back and listen to it all again, make notes. But there was 18 victims. And I believe 6 of those victims died as a result of his actions. So the first case that was attributed to him was the Donna and Jody, the 2 girls, nursing students, 18 and 19, both survived. No, sorry, Donna died and Jody survived. So in his mind, his very first gun crime, because he switched from a knife to a gun, he killed one of the 2 girls. I had this discussion with Carl. I wouldn't like to be a police officer because you have so much information coming in, but Donna passed away from being shot because she was half out of the car, and her dad said, hey, a yellow car has been circling this neighbourhood before the event happened. So the yellow car was mentioned in the very first tragic death of Donna by her dad. Then we move on to Carl and Rosemary. They both survived, but Carl had a metal plate to replace some of his skull because he was shot in the head. Then Donna and Joanne both survived, but Joanne became a paraplegic. Then we have Christine and John, who were on a date, I think, at the time, 26 and 30. and Christine passed away through her injuries, and John survived. Then we have Virginia, who was 19, walking home from school, is faced with a man with a gun. I have no idea what I would do in that situation, but she held her books up in some kind of protective manner, and sadly the bullet went straight through and Virginia died. Alexander and Valentina both died. It's so sad. Then we have the Sal and Judy. They both survived. Stacy died and Robert survived, losing his eye because of where the bullet went in and all of that on their first date. I mean, wow. And the passerby that he kind of shot at in the dark clearly survived. It's just very, very tragic. These people were going about their lives and he was in the vicinity. The passerby led detectives and said, hey, you were ticketing cars, and he got in one of those ticketed cars, and it was a yellow car, which they were alerted of in the very beginning. But when you only have one, it came out later that there were several reports of different coloured cars and all of that. I will get into that. But again, it feels like, with hindsight, I guess, they should have honed in on that yellow car a bit more. But, you know. Now, they found his diaries in his apartment and they were going through that, and apparently he meticulously noted different things in there, setting off 1,400 fires, which is an insane number. But we know that it goes from theft to arson to murder to serial murder. That is the escalation of it. While he is sitting there coming out with all of his spiel, his defence, his reasonings, and he said, hey, I was told by the neighbour's dog to go kill these people. And then he admits that it was all a hoax. The demonic possession was all a hoax. It was all for insanity pleas, or justifications in his mind as to why he did these. Now, credit where credit is due, in a very sadistic kind of way. He pled guilty, which meant no court, no putting the families through any more trauma. The survivors didn't have to face him. That, in my opinion, was admirable, because even his lawyers were going, hey, no, don't do that. Let's go with the insanity plea. And he went, no, I did it. I'm holding my hands up to it, and I done that. Then he tried to escape. And that kind of reminded me of a Ted Bundy. I'm not sure if Ted Bundy was going on around this time. I think he wasn't he? I would have to fact check his escapes to this sort of timeline, but it seems to be an inspiration. Very, very failed attempt at trying to escape. He should have become his own lawyer, taken himself to the library, and then would have been easy, because Ted Bundy did it. So he was sentenced 25 years to life for each murder. The murder of Donna, Christine, Virginia, Alexander, Valentina, and Stacy. Now, in my opinion, I honestly think that, yes, 25 years to life for each murder. Now, that's him away for a very, very long time. Yeah, we'll get to the parole bit in a minute, but that's him away for a very, very long time. And judges and lawyers will be like, yeah, sorted. I honestly think they should have gone, hey, we're going to add more time on because of the trauma and for committing such heinous acts. You for the survivors, you're going to serve 25 years to life for each murder and 20 years for that. I mean, Robert lost an eye. Joanne became a paraplegic. And Carl had a metal plate in his head to replace some of his skull. They should have added a ton of time on top. So there was no way he was getting out. He's not getting out anyway, but... then another point that I picked up is that he wrote to the governor and said, hey, I deserve to be in prison. I belong in jail. I did some very terrible, horrible things to innocent people. Can you cancel my parole meetings? And they went, no. And then literally 5 minutes later, I don't know actual timelines, but 5 minutes later he went, hey, just so you know, at this parole hearing, I'm no longer a risk whatsoever to the general public. And I'm thinking, are you doing a tactical ploy here? Are you keeping your name in the public domain? Like, what is his mindset? From saying, hey, I did something really terrible, really awful, I deserve to be in jail, to the point where he even said, I'm not going to tell you who attacked me. I mean, most don't anyway in jail because, you know, that sets up the precedent, doesn't it? But I deserved it. It was kind of my punishment. It's what I deserved. He's very good at sort of saying, hey, yeah, I did horrible things. I killed all of these people, injured all of these people. And then in the next breath going, hey, I'm no risk whatsoever. I've done my time. Yeah. That was all very admirable from my opinion. In the true crime scenario, we always go not guilty. We drag the families and the victims and the survivors through an extensive amount of extra trauma to try and get him in jail. Yes, he ran the risk of getting even more time, I guess, but then he goes, well, hang on a minute. I didn't kill 6 people and injure others. I only killed 3 of those. I killed Donna, I killed Alex and Virginia. The rest were all part of a cult that I belonged to, but I can't name them people, but I can give you 2 names, but they died. I think one was ruled a suicide and one was ruled a car accident. Going by memory, but yeah, I can name those 2 because, you know, they've passed on. And then it turns out they lived at the back of his house, and wasn't it their dog that he was the son of? Do you know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense. Yeah. Going back to someone who agrees with the cult theory, why is there different accounts of hair colour, height, cars and all of this? Well, I'll tell you why. Because 1, the victims either died or didn't see it coming, and the eyewitnesses that were at several of the scenes would have had street lighting or their lack of because it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I don't know if America do it, but here in the UK, all our lampposts in streets go out, so it is pitch black outside. If that happens in America, you can understand why you'd be like, yeah, I think he was blonde, and all of that. It's dark. You have the shock of the event, because even if you're not the victim or you're an eyewitness, that's traumatic. And then the police are there saying, hey, what did he look like? What was he wearing? Are you going to recall it there and then? Probably not. And are you going to go back and say, hey, I think I might have got that wrong? Most do, not all do. So, yeah. He pretty much worked in the twilight hours of the morning, so not many people will have seen anything. I'm not even going to get into when now he's a Christian, he's active on Christian websites. I don't buy the cult theory because, yeah, I just don't buy it. I don't buy it. He went from job to job. He didn't have any real friendships from what I gather. If you're swinging from job to job and, all of that, moving state to state, because he moved when he stabbed the 2 girls, he then moved out of the area. He was probably constantly moving. He was in Queens 1 minute, the Bronx the next. How do you make friendships? Do you know what I mean? It makes it a bit suspicious, in my opinion. So I do believe he was the lone shooter. And let's say a couple of my fanatics, my true crime fanatics, if we were to form a cult and go on a murder spree, I commit a murder, then give you the gun, and then you go and commit a murder, what would be the point in that? It was the same gun used at all of the crime scenes, so I can't see it being passed around. I've never heard of a case where a group of people have shared a murder weapon and gone out and done several crimes in separate places on random nights. Do you know what I mean? I don't buy it. I do think he was a loner, and all the rest of it. That is my opinion. Yours may differ. You may go with the cult theory. I don't think there is much evidence to back it up. Hence, no new charges have come forward. Hence, it's still open. It might be open, but it's probably filed away. I believe that this guy went out on random nights and just shot innocent people. And then he had the nerve to tell the sniper to stop hurting innocent people. I mean, seriously. But that is all of my opinions. For those of you who are in my premiere right now, I appreciate it. You're obviously sharing your opinions with me right now. And, yeah. Are we buying the cult theory? I don't think so. I don't know. Maybe you are. Maybe you're trying to convince me right now that he was part of this cult. That he can't name names, but 2 people that died years before, he can name those ones. But there you go, you guys. That is Son of Sam case. Thank you so much for joining me. I really do appreciate it. I don't want to say I hope you enjoyed, because we have 6 victims. How many survivors were there? Because they would have all been injured in some way. Jodie survived. Cole and Rosemary survived. Donna and Joanne survived. John survived. Sal and Judy survived. Robert survived. And the passerby. So that's 10 that I can count. 10. And I have 6 murder charges. So that's 16. Oh, and the 2 that were stabbed, of course. They both survived. So 10. I don't know if the other one did or not. Let's just assume she has. Well, they didn't find a body and ID it, so maybe she did survive. So 12 survivors and 6 tragic deaths in this case. Very, very sad. Very, very sad. Yeah, thank you for joining me. If you're on replay, as always, please do leave your thoughts and comments down below. Was he a lone serial killer? Was he part of a cult? Let me know in your opinions and your thoughts. I truly do appreciate it. I enjoy doing these true crime cases. I am looking into cases for next week. So if you have any suggestions, please again let me know and I will get looking into them. I will see you next week for another true crime story time. Please do remember I am live on Monday for a much more light-hearted, come what may, live chat with you guys. And of course, Up to No Good, we have 2 or 3 winners to draw for our Up to No Good Christmas and winter themed events. And yeah, have a wonderful rest of your evening or your day, and I will see you next week. Apologies for those of you who don't know, I am working on Tree Huggers from Prism. Yeah, that's the kit I have been working on, and this is the progress I've made so far. Stay safe out there. Bye.